Let it go, let it go. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. There's my attempt. As always, my name's Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend Adam. How you doing, man?
Yeah, not too bad. I certainly won't give it an attempt, but if it's a stag do, anything goes, right? Anything goes, especially at halftime versus York City. How are you doing, Rory? More importantly,
Yeah, I'm all right, man. I'm holding it together, just about. Rough weekend, all things considered, but keeping my chin up. And
yeah.
the scenes at Adams Park did cheer me up. I just sent it to you straight away, and I was like, right, mate, what's going on here? You need to explain this. How has this been arranged? It's genuinely an impressive feat by the best man, by the way. But yeah,
Yeah.
what happened?
So basically, a group of lads came for one of the Wycombe Wanderers supporters, basically stag do's. He's called Nick. I don't know him personally, unfortunately, but he did a valiant effort of being dressed up as Frozen and singing his heart's content at half time. What I think amused everyone was the fact that the players were like in the background going, "Oh, fuck this," and just kicking the balls in the meantime, just getting on with it, basically trying to warm up in the cold breeze of the Buckinghamshire landscape. But yeah, no, it was a fascinating one because obviously it kind of erupted on social media, didn't it? Amount of retweets going, "What the fuck is going on here?" basically, and genuinely thinking that we'd set this up as like halftime entertainment. But rest assured, it wasn't to do anything with planned entertainment. It was to do with embarrassing the main man, who's a Wycombe Wanderers supporter. So fair play to Nick for trying anyway.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Two beautiful touches. He was in the dress, and they did have the lyrics up on the big screen, so other people could get involved if they wanted to, which I really, really enjoyed. I absolutely love that. Just what the FA Cup first round is all about. It really did cheer me up compared to the Alex getting knocked out by, and I think this needs to be raised. Two football teams, Dagenham and Redbridge. It doesn't seem fair, but we did get knocked out, so there's our FA Cup adventure over. Elsewhere in the FA Cup, we did have a few upsets. The man with the best name in the world, Tom Tonks, knocked out Huddersfield with basically a direct throw-in. If the goalkeeper hadn't touched it, it wouldn't have counted, but he did, so it did. Tamworth go through 1-0. Walsall beating League One Bolton 2-1 and 110th minute winner here. The limbs at the end were absolutely incredible. Walsall having a hell of a season in League Two. They'll be playing the Alex this weekend. Looking forward to that. Nile Ranger got a winner in a derby that hadn't taken place in 35 years as Kettering Town beat Northampton Town 2-1. That was an extra time winner as well. Great to see him back enjoying his football again. My favourite result, well, there's two favourite results this weekend, I think. But the first of my favourite results is Harrogate beating Wrexham 1-0. The admin, the first post was welcome to Harrogate, just lovely old job. Yeah. And then I think a Wrexham podcaster tagged them, something like the Dragons come into town. And they just retweeted it with a terrible picture of a dragon, which I really enjoyed. But the result that everyone can get behind, Adam, and we all enjoy this. For the third time in a row, AFC Wimbledon beat that lot. It's just good for football, isn't it?
Yeah, football wins at the end of the day. So got no time for the franchise twins up north of the county, should I say? But yes, they stole a club and richly deserve to be further than League Two. They should be even further down the pyramid for all I can concerns. But yeah, great victory for AFC Wimbledon. Great victory, and well done to them.
Yeah, I absolutely love that they're dominating this fixture at the moment as well. They also stole our club captain, so they can genuinely fuck off. MK Don's really not a big fan of them. But guys, that was the FA Cup. We're kind of focus on the Premier League, unfortunately, this weekend. So we're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk all things Premier League. There were some upsets. We are back in its Premier League time, and let's start on the South Coast. Bournemouth 2, Manchester City 1. And we're not going to focus on Man City, not yet. We really, really, really want to focus on Bournemouth. They have now beaten Arsenal at home and Manchester City at home. Andoni Iraola, Adam, continues to do an incredible job. The levels he is getting out of this team, I think everyone is kind of surprised about that. Everyone knew there'd be a step up this year, or kind of expected
Mm,
a bit of a step up this year,
yeah.
but not this drastic, right? They've just been incredible.
No, they've been absolutely impeccable in terms of how they've kind of transitioned since last season. You know, there was that kind of run that Areola was on where it didn't look like he was going to turn it around. And yeah, he's getting the best out of players that he didn't necessarily bring into the club. You know, Bournemouth have had to be quite savvy in terms of the transfer dealings that they've done. They've delved into Europe for the first time, you know, getting players like Ivan Nilsson. And, you know, there were so many great performances across the pitch, you know, typified by the likes of Lewis Cook, for example, in the middle of the pitch, who inevitably seems the most underrated midfielder at the moment for what he does. But the likes of Antonio Semenyo, as well as Kirkes as well on that left-hand side. Phenomenal performances, but it's all down to the way that Areola gets this team to really apply themselves for these big matches. But you know, I feel like this is Bournemouth's now opportunity to push on because it feels like, you know, they're proving a lot of the doubters wrong in terms of where they felt Bournemouth were going to be this season. And yeah, they really did deserve this victory against Man City. I mean, how did you read this kind of game at the time? Were you shocked by the result, or were you like not surprised given the kind of recent efforts?
There was a part of me that was relieved. There was a big part of me that was
Yeah.
relieved, considering it took place after the Arsenal game. But I think I was not massively surprised. I thought the performance they put in against us when we played them, you could tell that they were a team that were going to cause any side problems. They are so well drilled in that system now. Their press is so aggressive. They do not give teams time to rest. And I thought they were always going to be capable of, like, when I saw City away to Bournemouth, I was like, there's a potential for them to drop points there. What I didn't expect was for it to be so dominant, really. I thought, like, if they were going to get a win, they might nick it. It might be like, you know, you kind of just catch them on the break in the 80th minute. But this was a game that was relatively comfortable for Bournemouth until, obviously, Gvardiol, who seems to be City's second striker at this point, gets the goal. Like, it was really comfortable. And I think that just gives even more credit to Bournemouth that they're not just a team that are willing to catch you on the break. They can absolutely dominate games and they can dominate teams. And I think the player, obviously, that's getting all the plaudits here is Semenyo, because it's another goal for him, another incredible performance. The way he changes pace, the strength he shows, his ability to beat a man, his finishing that's really coming into, like, fruition at the start of this season. I think even last season he showed flashes, right? But he's really coming into it now. I think he's just catching the eye every single time. But I think you're right to look at Lewis Cook. I also like Christie in the midfield as well. I think he's a player that was kind of written off for quite a while. But again, Iraola has really got more levels out of him. And I have to give a bit of a mention to Travers in the goal as well. Like, he's the backup goalkeeper, kind of thrown in. And it's just a really great performance from him. Made some great saves, really kept, like, defense nice and steady. And I thought it was just like a kind of another sign of, like, how well coached or how well together that team is, that like, you know, for a second choice keeper to come in and look fairly seamless, and not only look fairly seamless but be outstanding, I think really says a lot about the coaching that's taking place at that club. And I think Andoni Iraola is a manager, again, we talk about it every time we talk about it, but I think it is that, like, sliding doors moment, is that really bad start they had when he took over, and how the board just held on and were like, no, this is a process. We are going to get there. We know he's good enough. And now we can really see that, like, just given that time and with a bit of time to build the squad how he wants it, it's just that this team is such a joy to watch. That front four, and, like, even bringing in, like, losing Dominic Solanke, who, like, you know, is their talisman, like, best goal scoring season he's ever had. And then they bring in a guy from Porto, and he's fairly seamlessly stepped in and is getting goals and kind of fulfills that role in a similar profile. And you think everything is really well put together at that club at the moment. So I think it's a really exciting time for them. But Bournemouth fans, we are going to annoy you because we're now going to talk about where Iraola goes next. But I think as I watch this game, and with the kind of the school of Basque managers that are coming out, you know, like Arteta, Emery, Iraola, they're all kind of from the same little tiny part of Spain. And, like, you know, there's just a bit of a theme going on there. I think, is this a manager that could be a successor to Pep? Like, is this a kind of manager that if he doesn't renew this year, now I kind of think he will because the England job isn't there, and I think Pep kind of sees that there's a bit more of a future there. But if he doesn't, do you think he's a manager that Man City could look at and be like, they can develop this manager further, knowing that the ceiling for this guy is really high?
I don't know if the Man City job would be too big for him at this stage. I kind of get where you're going with that, but I think he probably needs a bigger club than Bournemouth for sure. He gives me Unai Emery vibes, the way that he's able to kind of mold these players to work in the philosophy that he's kind of brought from Rayo Vallecano onto Bournemouth and transitions that quite seamlessly into the Premier League, despite the difference in terms of intensity and the way that the game is played in the Premier League as well. So I think a lot of credit to his adaptability in that sense. But I think naturally he needs to probably get to a club of the ilk of like a Aston Villa or maybe a Spurs in the future, perhaps, or someone that's probably slightly bigger than where he's managing right now, but gives him the platform to really progress. And I think that will give him the opportunity, because I think whilst he's done a very good job, obviously the expectations are slightly higher. There's going to be a lot more games in comparison that he's going to have to deal with. And I think that requires a bit more kind of nous, a bit more kind of adaptability to those sort of circumstances, dealing with bigger squads as well, because I know traditionally he's working with smaller squads in his current two roles that he's had. So yeah, I don't think that's beyond the realms of possibility in the future, but certainly possibly too soon for a kind of replacement for Pep at this stage. But, weirder things have happened, Rory, and you never know, given the kind of way that City kind of look at their candidates. I think there's definitely a candidate in Areola, and what he's displayed so far has been phenomenal.
Because I could really see, I know, like, I'm kind of saying it as a not expectation, kind of a thought experiment, I suppose. Because I think I could really see his style of play working there, and it's an exciting brand of football. It's kind of, I could see basically that style at one of Europe's big clubs, and I could see him really at one of Europe's big clubs. And I think City could do worse, even though I do think you're right with the fact that, like, he needs a few jobs in between now and then. But it really shows just how elite a manager he is and how elite he could be in the future. Just an incredible, incredible job from Bournemouth. Really exciting season from them. Another huge performance. Yeah. But for Man City, do we kind of feel like this result has been coming? I think their performances haven't matched their results. And from what I saw online, a lot of City fans have just kind of gone, yeah, that's been coming. Okay, next one. It was just really uninspiring, really, from them, and quite lethargic, right?
Definitely. It's been, as you say, it's been on the cards for a while. The performance of Gundogan, for example, in this match wasn't inspiring. It wasn't really particularly great against Spurs. But I think, the impacts of Rodri, for example, is definitely having its toll on the City squad, because I think if Rodri's in that squad, they nick a draw or they go on to win the match, perhaps. If you look at Foden's chances in this match, he looks like a man that really needs a mental break at the moment. I think he will play a part in this season, but I think the chances that he had in this match last season, he takes and he scores those opportunities, for example. And a lot of pressure is applied on Erling Haaland now as well. The fact that he's not taking his chances, but I don't think it was down to the manner of how Haaland applied himself. It was just the fact that Bournemouth were just so resolute in their defending. They did a really good job. So yeah, I feel like this was always on the cards. It's going to be interesting because their next few fixtures aren't going to be too kind as well. They've got likes of Brighton, for example. They've got to play Liverpool soon as well. So it's going to be a very kind of tense time for Pep. I think they would like to get out of this period with potentially maximum points, but I think they're going to, as long as they don't lose points, that's the key. I think that's going to be really the catalyst for them to drive going forward. But yeah, they're going to have to ride out this period, and I think the way they're going to have to do that is shore up that right-hand side, because Kyle Walker is getting exploited time and time again at the moment, not helped by the fact that they are obviously having the likes of Foden in front of him, for example, in this match. they really need to think about how they balance out that team at the moment, because they seem to just lack that kind of intensity that they normally have when they need to grind out results at the moment, and they're just not applying themselves in the same way. And it seems like maybe teams have figured out that if you tack down that right hand side, Kyle Walker cannot do what he used to do in yesteryears and catch you up, for example, on the counter attack. So yeah, certainly something for Pep to kind of wonder what he does. Maybe rejigs personnel in that position and areas of the pitch. Maybe even change the philosophy for certain games, because I think it's not necessarily a bad thing for them to grind out results sometimes. But yeah, they've not been used to it, Rory. And I think as you allude to, the kind of social media for Rory around a loss for the very first time in what I think was 34 games or something stupid like that. It felt like they needed to come down to reality again. And maybe this is the nice little bump that they needed as a reminder, Rory.
Well, the two City fans offering each other out in a fight on Twitter was absolutely fantastic. I'll be honest. I thought the Arsenal head loss was mad post-game, but that Man City head loss in particular was incredible. I think Kyle Walker's a really interesting point, because what was the terrible Carragher line that he came out with? Leave the game before the game leaves you, which didn't really make much sense, but, it seems it's quite snappy. I kind of feel like I'm getting this with Walker at the moment, where I'm like, are we seeing that Gary Neville against West Brom performance? Are we seeing the kind of him kind of getting left behind? Because, he got absolutely torn to pieces in this game. There was the game against Fulham recently where he got absolutely ruined by Adama Traore as well. I kind of think, is it the time maybe, I don't know if Rico Lewis is primarily a right back. He seems to play everywhere, but is it the time to maybe get him in? Or you have to be asking Foden to do a little bit more defensive work, helping out and dropping back and doing his doggies, because he's just getting exposed far too often. I kind of also, not to compare everything to Arsenal, but that's the lens I see things through. I kind of put this Rodri absence down similar to kind of the Ødegaard miss for Arsenal, is that you can get through a few games without them, but then long term you start to notice the faults become a little bit more obvious and the gaps become harder to fill. And I think, because like Bournemouth as well as targeting the wings, like obviously with Semenyo and Tavernier. I was going to say that all French then, but I realised he's not French. But they also absolutely hammered the centre of the pitch. Like they were able to really expose the centre and that weakness in the midfield. And I think City just aren't really as secure anymore and not really holding on to games as much. So it'll be interesting to see. Like Kovacic is a decent player, but we knew he wasn't going to fulfil that Rodri role. We knew he wasn't going to be able to do that long term. So big loss for Man City, big result for Bournemouth. It kind of, it puts Liverpool top, doesn't it, after their win? And I think this next week or so, as you said, is huge for Man City. Look, we all know they're still going to win the league. It's fine, but it makes it a little bit interesting that they've lost, right? Fantastic for Bournemouth. And it made my Saturday just not quite as bad. So thank you, Pep. Thank you, Andoni, more importantly, because I was ready to commit on Saturday. It was horrendous. And this result really, really cheered me up. But let's talk about the result that made me want to cry this weekend. And I suppose, was there anything else we want to talk about in this game before we move on?
I think you summed it up, yeah.
Are you sure? We don't have to talk about it. Are you sure?
Nah, let's crack on.
Let's do it then. Newcastle 1, Arsenal 0. Frig me. The worst performance we've had in years. Like, Adam, before I go off, let's give Newcastle some praise, because they were fantastic. They were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, very good. I think they went back to basics. There was a few individuals in particular that I picked out for how well they did against Arsenal. The likes of Lewis Hall, who I felt had a very good game at left back, nullifying the threat from Saka. But also the likes of Joe Linton had a really good game. Obviously, inevitably, the attacking outputs of Anthony Gordon in this particular game was really good. He needed that as well, given the form of recent weeks. That cross was impeccable. Like, that was what I think Newcastle fans were craving a few weeks ago. They've been wanting him to kind of deliver that a bit more, maybe quicker, maybe just impulsively, like trying to deliver the ball rather than trying to take on his man sometimes. And that was a superb cross. And inevitably Isak's on the end of it, and we're starting to see him come into fruition. But yeah, fantastic backline performance from Newcastle. They can absorb this kind of pressure from Arsenal. It seemingly seems like, but it is just typifies that is the way that I suppose. If you look at it, Eddie Howe has gone about approaching certain games. Now he knows he's learned that tactic. He referred to it as when he went in his sabbatical from Bournemouth. He took in a Diego Simeone kind of session, and he learned that there's sometimes that's how you can absorb that pressure but still control the game. And I think that's what they did. They did really well, and that was typified by the performances of those individuals that I've highlighted, for example. But yeah, I mean, they did a fantastic job overall, and I think it just left Arsenal really frustrated on the day. But yeah, I suppose we have to kind of refer to Arsenal's kind of shortcomings in this match as well. They just did not look like they were up for it in certain areas of the pitch. Defensively, very shaky again. But yeah, even up top, just didn't feel like you were ever going to score, did it?
No, not really. The whole game, I was like, we can play until next week and we're not scoring. I wanted to just quickly say before I go on Arsenal, because I am delaying talking about him, I thought it was really interesting that Eddie Howe put Anthony Gordon on the right, because usually he's the left winger, and I thought it was really interesting that he put him on the right, knowing that Timber isn't the most natural left back and is much more comfortable on the right back, which is an issue I'm going to get to. Like, I think it was really interesting that he trusted Gordon on that right and went, no, I think you can be better there. And the speed of that cross is because he's a right footer on the right, and it's just like, okay, bang, whip it in straight away. Yeah. He doesn't have to cut inside and adjust his body angle. He can just get it in nice and early, and he's like, the air he catches there, I think Gabriel and Saliba between them could have done better, but it's an incredible cross and incredible header. It's just a goal where you're like, okay, yeah, fair play, lads, you've done us there. And I think they absolutely deserved it. There's no question, they absolutely deserved that win. And I think their defense was great, but it didn't really get worked that much. I feel like all they had to do was triple up on Saka, which is what they did. Yes. They had Lewis, Hall, Willock, and Byrne just on Saka every single time. And then the second they did that, well, none of the other 10 are going to do anything, so don't worry about it. There was only a few moments where, obviously, there's the Declan Rice header at the end when we finally put a decent cross into the area. He should have scored it. He's unlucky not to. Bad or not to. He definitely should have scored it. But their defence didn't have a lot to do. It really didn't have a lot to do. And I think this is the damning indictment of Arsenal, really. And I think more than the players, who definitely were half-arsed and it was a really just a horrendously disappointing performance, I feel like the team selection really let us down here. I think Arteta got it wrong, and he got it badly wrong, because I don't know if there was the necessity to play Thomas Partey at right back. Now, I know Thomas Partey was fantastic at right back against Liverpool. One of his best performances for us that we've ever seen. So I understand why Arteta might go, okay, well, this right wing thing, this right back thing works fine. But then in midfield, Rice and Marino isn't really working. It's not clicked yet. And that midfield just felt like there was zero creativity, zero balls forward. And what Thomas Partey does is fire balls through the lines that get the team facing forwards. And we just didn't have that in the midfield at all. It was, again, we've gone back to the kind of Emery and early Arteta days of the kind of arc of doom where the ball just gets passed around in front of the other team for 90 minutes. And they just go, yeah, boys, knock yourself out. We know you can do that forever. And I think it was just so I think the team selection let us down, because Timber, you could have just put at right back. We've got 3 left backs that are available. I know Zinchenko came on and was terrible, but he's a bit more technically gifted. He can maybe find that pass, spark that creativity, and it would have just made it a little bit more balanced. You could have put Partey into midfield and then just had that Havertz as the focal point up front. So I feel like first half, he was just dragged out wide. He was just lost in the middle of nowhere. So I think it was just, the team selection was really, really bad, and the team also let the manager down massively. And I think what's important now is for the players because this is a big week. This is a massive week, because this was meant to be the easiest game of the week. Sorry, Newcastle fans, but we've got to go to the San Siro and Stamford Bridge. This was supposed to be the easiest game of the week, and now we're coming into it at possibly our lowest point in the season. like in terms of like the mood of the dressing
Yeah.
room and stuff. What I would say is that we had a blip like this last year, 20 games into the season, and we went on a huge winning streak after we lost to Fulham with the worst performance of the season. I think this team is very good at reacting to setbacks, but we need to do it quickly. And bad news, when it rains, it pours, I suppose. Edu has today announced that he's stepping down as the sporting director, which is not great timing from the whoever decided to release the story. I don't know if the club found out today or if they've known for a while. I think there were rumours about it around January about Nottingham Forest being interested in him. So I think it's something the club might have been aware of. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And all of a sudden, what was looking like a pretty promising season is looking like the foundations are cracking. It's funny how football changes so quickly, right? But what I would say is we were kind of this far off it 20 games into the season last year, and we lost the title on the last day of the season. So I think I'm not going to completely write us out, but it's a massive blessing that Man City didn't win. Because I think if Man City had won, I would be calling us out of it. So yeah, bad times, terrible, horrendous weekend. I'm glad I don't know if I was glad it was the early kickoff, so my weekend was just ruined, or I'd have preferred if it was the last game of the weekend, because it was just really depressing. But a fantastic win for Newcastle. And do we think this could be a springboard for them? Because they found it difficult this season. This is a big landmark result for them, a big turn in like the kind of apparent application and attitude of the players. Like this could really push them on, right?
It could be, yeah, definitely. I think they've been craving, obviously, the return of Isak definitely into the fold. But yeah, I do have my reservations about Newcastle. I feel like that they are in a position where they always seem to go through like a cycle, and it's getting that consistency of run for them. That seems to be the issue at the moment. And I don't know, you look across the team, and I feel there's a lack of depth at the moment in terms of being able to continuously maintain momentum going forward as well. So I think there is some question marks there as well, because I don't know, you have to kind of wonder what the kind of group is trying to achieve at the moment, because they don't seemingly want to invest a lot more at the moment. Obviously, PSR reasons potentially playing a part, but you would expect that, you know, by now they'd have a better group of players than they've currently assembled. And I'd be worried about where they go from here, because I think in the summer, I would anticipate at least one or two of those bigger players to move on. And that's the worry for Newcastle.
Yeah, well, Bruno seems destined for Man City at some point, doesn't he? I think that's kind of the writing's been on the wall for a while there. And Isak, hopefully, please God, Arsenal, just buy a frigging striker and make it Alexander Isak, because I can't. The last thing, like, we have spent the least on attackers in the top six, and you look at that performance and you go, well, that's what it gets you. That's what it gets you. Like, I love that we bought Calafiori this year. Absolutely love him. I don't know if we needed a fourth left back, although with the injuries we've had this year, we did. But I think, like, I don't know if we needed to spend the money there and not on Nico Williams, for example. If you know what I mean? Or not on Benjamin Sesko. I know, and like really push. I just feel like Arteta doesn't like signing strikers, and at some point we need to. So hopefully the new sporting director, whoever that may be, like signing attackers, because this team really needs it. I love Kai Havertz, but he can't do it all on his own. And neither can Bukayo, unfortunately. He can do everything else, but not that. We're going to leave that game there because I'm fully ready to forget about it forever. And let's go to the story of the season, Adam. Absolutely, without a doubt. Nottingham Forest 3, West Ham United 0. Chris Wood with a goal, another goal, and Ola Aina, a pod favourite. We always give him his flowers with his Serie A past, a player that's often overlooked, with an absolute banger, and topped it all off with a Ribena. What a lad. Absolutely loved it.
He did enjoy himself, didn't he? He even referred to the fact that he was so knackered at the point before he unleashed that shot that he said, why not have a go? But there seems to be a really good camaraderie about this Nottingham Forest team at the moment. You know, you've got players like him pulling out some outstanding performances, like of Ryan Yates, maybe being kind of murmured for the England team at the moment for selection, which is wild, but
That's
these things happen.
Yeah.
This is what happens when like these teams go on these kind of rich veins of forms at the moment. But you have to give credit to Nuno Espirito Santo for what he's tried to achieve there. It felt like that kind of pre-season was what he needed to get them on board. And he's playing to their strengths. Ultimately, he's playing to the team's strengths, and you feel like when Ward-Prowse is in this squad, for example, they're going to get the same combination of crosses into the box, which Wood will be on the end of. So Wood seems like to be in the best place possible because they're playing to his strengths, and he is being an ultimate striker for them right now. But like we've got the opportunities with Hudson-Odoi as well, like Langer, offering that kind of pace on the counter-attack. That's what they seem to do quite well. And then obviously this weekend it was highlighted around the central defensive pairing of Murillo and Milinkovic even. Them two work really well together as a pairing. Murillo likes to take the ball out and chase his man, and Milinkovic is just there. He's just the more stable of the two, but they seem to work so well together. So the balance of this team is phenomenal, and that's why they're doing so well, really, Rory, is that they've got the camaraderie, they've got the balance right. They just seem unstoppable at the moment in terms of their form. So, full of credit to the way they've approached it, and you just feel that they're going to add quality in the next window as well. It doesn't feel like this is going to end because they've got a good owner that's willing to invest into the kind of infrastructure as well. So I think this carries on, Rory. But a lot of concern about West Ham and Lopetegui because that performance was dreadful. Not a sending off, which isn't great. And I don't know where the likes of West Ham supporters now look at this situation and kind of wonder where they better off with just sticking with Moyes. That is going to be the question marks that will be kind of floated about, But at the same time, they did need. I think they needed a change. However, I just don't think Lopetegui is the man to bring them out of it. What's your thoughts on the current situation there?
Yeah, I don't know how long you say, the change of style is the cause of this, and how long you say, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? I think, with Lopetegui, he's never a manager that I've been convinced by anyway. And even when they appointed him, he did a fairly decent job at Wolves, right? But even when West Ham appointed him, I was like, I'm not sure if this is as inspiring and as it's a new dawn kind of appointment as they think it is. And then when you're now 10 games into the season and you're not really seeing any level of improvement, you're not really seeing. In fact, you're not only not seeing improvement, you're seeing a rapid decrease in your points, performances, everything. I think you have to think at some point, okay, well then, when do we pull the cord on this? Because it just looks so horrendous. And what the issue with West Ham is as well, and what the really worrying thing is that the second they concede again, or they never really look like getting in the game again. If you know what I mean? It's like they concede and they go, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. And then they just become super passive. And it's like just hoping that Bowen can get the ball and run through 10 men and get a goal. There's just the resignation in the team. And it's kind of summed up here again. That Alvarez sending off was just such a stupid, as blatant a red card as you're going to see, a really thick thing to do. And then, on top of it, he gets lost in the stadium and doesn't, and all the fans are just but in fact, it's the worst sending off I've seen in terms of how bad you can get a sending off wrong. If you know what I mean? All you got to do is walk down the tunnel. You got one thing, just head down the tunnel and sod off. And you couldn't even do that. So I think it really typifies West Ham at the moment. I'm amazed he's still in the job, honestly. And I think even when they got the win against Manchester United, one, they shouldn't have won that game. Everyone knows that United should have won that 5-0 in the first half. It was never a performance where you're like, okay, this is going to give West Ham a springboard. It was everyone going, okay, how bad am Man United? How fucked is Eric? So even that performance and that what is on paper, you'd be like, wow, you've beaten United, isn't even that spark that can get the season going. It isn't even that thing that can get a bit of belief. And I think yeah, there's a lack of discipline, there's a lack of idea, there's a lack of cohesion. The defense looks frigging all over the place. Like, it's just that it looks like they're just handing it in every week. They're just handing it in, being like, nah, this week isn't us. So he clearly hasn't got the backing of the players either. So I think it absolutely has to be a matter of time. But I quickly want to talk about Nottingham Forest a little bit more, because I think there is a bit more positivity to squeeze out of that, I think. But I want to talk about Chris Wood, because it's not only that he's like just being the target man and like heading it from crosses. He's like, his hold-up play is really good. He's bringing other players into play. Like, if you look at that Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White and Elanga behind him, that is a very good Premier League attack. And I know we've been saying this every week now, but I think it's not only... I don't want to like go too hard on this and then be like, in a couple of weeks we're like, oh, Forest are fucked. But like, that's not only players in good form, that's like a high quality level of player there, if you know what I mean. It's not like, and maybe that's, I don't know if that's like an obvious thing to say, but like, it's not like if it's an Ipswich and they've had a couple of games and you think, okay, these players aren't really going to, they've not got the ability to continue this. This is just people in a purple patch. I think there is genuinely like enough quality there for them to be like, you know, pushing above mid-table. I'm going to go there for now, right? Like, that is a really high quality attack. And then behind a player with the experience, and a player that, I'll be honest, I thought his career was kind of done, right? I think post the Burnley move to Newcastle, which was a fucking odd one, which basically just relegated Burnley, right? Like, post that move, I was like, okay, this guy's just kind of, his career's going to peter out now. But this is like, it's just amazing to see, right? And I think he seems like a really honest professional. He seems like a good lad. And they've, as you said, they've clearly got the system just built around maximising his output, right?
Yeah, definitely. I've always been impressed with his credentials, because he's been on various loan spells in his career, the likes of Leicester City, for example, Millwall, Leeds United. He's proved himself on those kind of places. And I think he deserved that kind of step up to the Premier League at that very moment, because he was an international striker at the same time for New Zealand. And I appreciate they probably don't get many competitive games at their Oceania kind of division. But when he's able to kind of put it onto a platform where he's hustling for the ball, you know, he's making a nuisance of himself. I know he's more all-rounded in terms of his game, but yeah, I seem to remember rockets that he used to do in those days when he was playing for the likes of Leeds United, and I think at West Brom, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So he's got that in his arsenal, and I think he is very much an underrated striker. I think he was harshly done by that move to Newcastle, because I think, yeah, obviously, as you allude to, it was almost like certified relegation now for Burnley. But, you know, he offered quite a lot to his game, and I think maybe Newcastle didn't get the most out of him. And now he's come to a club where they put a lot more trust in terms of that philosophy. They're going to make the most of him. And out of the two, between him and Awoniyi, who I think everyone was expecting to really push on, he's really dominating. He's really deserving of that call-up, really, in terms of that first 11. Yeah, I think he cements that now spot for himself, because I think it's really difficult for anyone to displace Wood unless he gets injured. So, yeah, I've got a lot of credit. I think he's a very good striker. And, you know, even if he was at a top team, I don't think he would be a bad call-up in terms of coming off the bench. You know, he offers something different. And I think sometimes for a team's dynamic, you want someone to offer you something different to what your options are on the pitch sometimes. So I think he's a really, pound for pound, really well, you know, good value striker.
Well, it's 4 goals in his last 3 games in the Premier League now. Like, absolutely incredible scoring run. And in all competitions, including international football, I think he's scored in his last 7 games now. I was just looking. So he's just on an incredible hot streak. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in a row. And he's got 6 goals in that time, including one against Tahiti. So absolutely lovely. But yeah, great run of form for him. Let's talk very quickly. Where do we realistically think this season ends for Forest? Do we think this continues? Do we think they get Conference League? Do you think they end up higher mid-table? What do you think happens here? Because I think Nuno, it's good to see him really doing well. It's good to see him having a bit of a project.
I don't know. I'll be honest, I was one of those that felt that they were going to get relegated this season
Yeah, I'm pretty
because
sure we
I
both
just
had them to
didn't
get
think
relegated
I
at the
didn't
beginning of the
fancy them,
season.
to be honest. So look, I think it really depends on the teams below them whether they'll get a run. The likes of Fulham, for example, Brighton. I would anticipate in that mix you've got possibly still Man United to come into it as well under Amorim. I don't know if that's really feasible, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Could they be the outsiders? I don't know at this stage. I think it depends on how far they get to, say, around January. Where are they placed by January? And if they are in a fairly kind of stable position in the top five, I would say, then you never know. All they need to do is just make the most of that kind of home games, I would say, because they can do it away from home as well. They proved it against Liverpool this season that they can counter-attack teams. I think if they can make the most of their home games, then potentially that's where they kind of aim for. But yeah, I still think they will fall out. I think they'll be 8th, 9th, maybe by the end of the season if they carry on with the same momentum, because I just think other teams will come in and out of it. Some of the teams might fall from Europa, Conference League, etc. So they might even have a late impact. I always find that it's always teams when you get to sort of December, January, that's when you start seeing where teams are actually going to end up. So, but yeah, look, let's be positive about Forest. They've done amazingly well to get to this point, and they're proving all the doubters wrong, including us.
Well, exactly. And I'll just say now, Arsenal are definitely losing at the City Ground this year because we lost to them when they were crap. So now they're good. We are definitely losing to them. Frig. There's another one. But good. Let's leave that one there. I'm genuinely really happy for Forest because it looked like such a chaotic clown show with all the transfers, but they've somehow, like Chelsea, managed to turn it into a functional squad. And you're like, you know what? Maybe they knew what they were doing all along. But let's leave that one there. West Ham, just no positives for them at the moment. And let's go to a team, finally, with a positive. Finally, they have a positive. And of course, it was handed to them by Everton, because why wouldn't it be? Southampton 1, Everton 0. Adam Armstrong in the 85th minute. I saw that Ramsdale has got the outstanding performance in this game, which probably tells quite a lot of the story. Beto, obviously, with a late disallowed goal for offside, right? I think.
Yes. Yes.
But Adam, how massive is this for Southampton? A relegation 6-pointer. It was just vital they got something here for something to happen this season, right?
Yeah, they need something like this just to get behind, and it's really important. Given I think I'm just looking at the table now. That leaves two teams without a victory now. So Wolverhampton Wanderers and Ipswich Town now without a victory. Look, I think Southampton's still going to be there or thereabouts in that kind of relegation mix, to be honest. I don't think this changes it, but certainly gives Russell Martin something to build behind. Because I think in recent weeks, they've been found out for their fragilities in terms of their style of football. Even that Leicester City game kind of typifies the mentality. And perhaps this is the kind of defining moments that will help them maybe in a survival bid. I suspect not, but we shall see. But I mean, I suppose more concerns about Everton as well, because I'm looking at that position right now, 9 points from 10 games. Not great, really, when you look at the grand scheme of things. And I think they're a team you have to worry about going forward as well, because, the boos that Beto's been getting as well, it's not sustained. It's not healthy, is it really, for the way that they're going about it? It just feels like inevitably they're going to be there or thereabouts again in that relegation mix by the end of the season. But yeah, Southampton, let's see. I think they need to add some serious quality really to stand survival chances, Rory, because I've never been convinced in the summer transfer business that they did enough personally, and I suspect they'll need to do some more.
No, well, I just think, look, they're still going to go down. Sorry, Southampton fans, but I think it gives them. I just think this win is massive for there to be a little bit of narrative around the season of can they stay up, right? Because if you then lose this game at home in a team that can't really buy a win themselves, and you just all of a sudden you're like, okay, so we are finished, and this just gives them a little bit of a okay, look, we can get some points here, we can give it a go, and I think it's just huge psychologically for them. But for Everton, I just freaking out. Every time they looked like they were turning the corner. They were like unbeaten in 4, 2 wins, 2 draws. They were kind of like looked like they were getting a bit of steam behind themselves. And then a result like this is just it takes all the enthusiasm out straight away and takes all the energy out straight away. And you just think, I don't play it like, yeah, I agree. I don't think booing your striker as they come on the pitch is a helpful thing to do. If you know what I mean, like, I don't think that's going to help anyone. But I also just can't help but just completely sympathise with the Everton fans of just like, fucking hell, here we go again. Like, it's just the same thing. Repeat. We're going to stay up on the last game of the season. We're going to celebrate it because we need to celebrate something, and then rinse and repeat. You can see the apathy just leaking out of the place, and I think it's just like a performance that sums up everything that's wrong at that club.
And they've got the
minute.
Friedkin group to come in and help them off on the pitch as well as off the pitch, right? And catch out our Serie A edition where we talk a lot about the Friedkin group and how that probably isn't going to be a good thing. But
Yeah,
never mind.
it's not something I'd be getting overly excited about. Just Google Roma, AS Roma, and see the headlines that come up, and you'll see the kind of general vibe going on at that club at the minute. But let's leave that one there. Huge win for Southampton. I'm delighted for Ramsdale that he got a clean sheet as well. I'm like, yes, Aaron, build on that, mate, please. Let's go elsewhere. Liverpool 2, Brighton 1. First half, I cannot believe Brighton did not get more than one goal. A beautiful goal from Kadioglu, a player I've been excited to see in the league for a while. It's good to see him cap off that performance with a goal. But ultimately, Liverpool do get the result. 2 absolutely incredible moments of quality in the second half that really just saw them over the line, right? It was just one of those things of, ultimately, if you've got world-class players on the pitch, they'll do world-class things, right?
Yes, certainly in the Mo Salah example anyway, I would say the Cody Gakpo was a bit fortuitous. I think he even admitted post-match that he was meant to get to cross into the box as opposed to back post of the Brighton net. But yeah, no, look, Brighton, again, I suppose very hot and cold in terms of the performance that they displayed against Liverpool in the first half. Imperious, they were so good, they clearly targeted the kind of counter-attacking lines through the middle, interestingly, trying to exploit the pace of Van Dijk in particular, because they knew he was obviously slower of the two between him and Konate. Konate gets injury before half-time. But it was interesting, obviously, alluded by Arne Slot post-match about the fact that they lacked intensity in that first half. And to a degree, yes, that was definitely the case. But I also think Brighton was smarter. They were smarter on the ball. They knew what their game plan was. I just felt like in the second half, they maybe caved in a bit too early. Maybe they just needed to ride out the kind of first, 20 minutes of the game and then try and push on. Unfortunately, like you say, though, with the qualities of Mo Salah, who, just ran at Estepanan, and he really didn't know where to kind of go with Mo Salah running at you at that kind of pace. And then that shot, just lethal in that respect. It was an incredible bit of skill. And it's mad to think that Mo Salah still hasn't been kind of having contract extension conversations yet. I know he's at that kind of age now at 33 where potentially you're kind of talking about maybe a 2 or 3 year contract to see him to the end. But clearly he still loves the club. He still wants to be there. It's just a question mark for the club to decide whether they want to evolve and transition away from him. But I think if he does go, there'll be a few clubs after his services, that's for sure, because he's still got it in him. And he is a match winner in that respect. So to get rid of him would be naive from a Liverpool perspective. But yeah, I still think this also showed that maybe Arne Slot, there is an element to get at this team, certainly I think there is still in the middle of the park maybe some question marks. I mean, I feel with McAllister sometimes he can be dominated by the fact of his height as well, but also Curtis Jones a bit hit and miss of late in recent weeks. He's had some good performances, but mixed in with some maybe not so great kind of off the ball kind of decision making as well. So I think that's the key here, is that there is still some fragility to be got at, but look, they they managed to win the match. So I think that's positive from a Liverpool perspective. I know your kind of WhatsApp group was going mental about how well Liverpool are doing right now, but I do feel like they are still waiting to have their bad patch, so to speak. They are still waiting to experience that.
Yeah.
I know they've had a few injuries at the moment, but they haven't had maybe some of the bigger games yet. And in a few weeks' time, obviously, we alluded to it earlier, they will have City. But yeah, we shall see how that has an impact on their season as well. Because once they have some of the bigger games, then when they're back to back as well, Rory, that can definitely take its toll on the kind of performance levels.
Yeah, I've got an uncle who won't leave me alone. He's driving me mad. He's a Liverpool fan. I can't. He's like psychologically torturing me from the other side of the planet. He lives in Toronto, and he's like fully in my head rent free. I just can't. He will not leave it. But yeah, I think there's an interesting narrative around Liverpool at the moment because you have got Salah in the last year of his contract. You have got Trent in the last year of his contract. You have got Van Dijk, who's kind of getting towards the end, like not towards the end, but he's over the top, right? So I think there's an interesting kind of narrative here of like, is this the one last roll of the dice for that Liverpool team of like, okay, we can get one more title and then Slot gets to transition into whatever he wants this team to be afterwards. I think there's an interesting narrative happening there. I think Salah will end up in Saudi Arabia, but what we all want is for him to come back to Serie A and he can win Serie A, right? He can come to Inter or something and like finally lift it to the Scudetto and then he can go. But I think like it'll be I think Liverpool genuinely they are vulnerable, but they're massive. Like they've been the most impressive team by some distance so far this
100%.
season. So a deserved win, I think, in the end. But Brighton really need to learn to put games to bed quicker. I think because I'm very aware of time and because I don't really want to talk about Spurs. Spurs beat Aston Villa 4-1, fantastic win. Brennan Johnson scoring again. They're much less reliant on Son now, which I think is a really big strength for Spurs. Their whole attack doesn't go through him anymore. When he doesn't play well, they have other options. Aston Villa, all the talk of Emery being better than Arteta has suddenly evaporated into the air, given a couple of results. But I think this is a really worrying little blip for Villa that's happening at the moment. Elsewhere, super quickly, Manchester United-Chelsea 1-1, one of the lowest quality games I've seen in the Premier League for a while, Adam. I thought the technical ability here was just in the bloody ground. It was awful.
Yeah, it was kind of reminded me of the yesteryear kind of games, but without maybe that same intensity and same quality on the pitch sometimes. I think Chelsea were the brighter of the two, and had they been a bit more confident, maybe more assured of their approach, I think they get a win here in this match. However, Man United had moments. I think that's a positive from a Man United perspective. I think they were more free-flowing in the respect of how they played. And they seem to be more willing to get up to the other end of the pitch to try and create opportunities, which I think was definitely lacking under Ten Hag's kind of tutelage, shall we say. So there's positives. I think they just ride it out until Amorim comes into the doors, but there's still a lot for him to do. As for Chelsea, I think they'll be gutted that they didn't make the most of this opportunity. Man United were there for the killing, I think, and they'll be regretting that.
Those attackers for United were absolutely terrible. Højlund, Xerxes, and Garnacho all looked like... I saw a City fan on Twitter who's quite funny, just called Macca, and he was like, fair play to that Xerxes lad. Is he a skateboarder or something? Which I thought was really funny. Like, he just did not look like a footballer at all when he came on. It's really sad to see. I think it was Dougie Critchley put it up on Twitter as well, like, what I hate about... No, it was the guy from T4... I've forgotten his name now, but he's saying what I hate about watching Manchester United is watching really young players go in there, really young, exciting players, then within 3 months, all that promise has disappeared and they just become utter crap. And it's just those attackers look terrible. I'm really glad I only caught the second half of that game. Honestly, it was atrocious. Wolves drew 2-2 with Palace. Two teams slowly improving, but neither of them improving enough. I did see a fantastic tweet from a Wolves fan, which I'm glad to get the bookmark up. If a Wolves fan shagged his missus to celebrate beating Luton and got her pregnant, the kid would have been born now, and we haven't won a game since. They are bottom of the league, still without a win. I think the support are very much split on what should happen with Gary O'Neill. Maybe not as split as they were a couple of weeks ago. And Ipswich drew 1-1 with Leicester, another late equaliser for Ipswich. I'm officially branding them this year's Luton. They are plucky, but they're just not quite good enough to stay up. Adam, anything else to say before we go to our weekend and European previews?
I think you meant to say Leicester City with their pluckiness in the last goal. But yes, no, I think that kind of summarises the game week, that's for sure.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to leave that there, guys. When we come back, we're going to look at all the European action and next week's Premier League games. And here we are back, and it's time for the European midweek action, kicking off tonight as you guys are listening with Xabi Alonso, the man it could have been, taking on the man it is as he returns to Anfield, whereas Liverpool take on Leverkusen. This is going to be a really interesting game tactically. I think there's going to be lots of goals in this game. Adam, you excited about this? This looks like a big one.
This could be the chess match that you've always wanted to watch, right? It's certainly going to be fascinating from a game point of view because both teams in different kind of bouts of form, so to speak. Leverkusen have been a bit unpredictable with the ways that they've played. But yeah, certainly good to see potentially a good matchup here. Both teams with full intent to attack as well. So it should be goals potentially, given what we talked about earlier with the fragilities of Liverpool's defence. But let's see. Be a fascinating game, that's for sure.
I'm pretty excited about this one. And with even more narrative, the narrative doesn't stop there, people. Ruben Amorim taking on Manchester City as City go to Sporting. Just a nice little warm-up. See if he can endear himself to the City fans already. We all expect City to get a win there, but maybe he's got a trick up his sleeve. Who knows? Aston Villa have got a trip to Bruges as they take on Club Bruges in Belgium. Aston Villa currently top of the Champions League, which doesn't really make any sense, but they're top of the Champions League. And let's see if they can continue it. This is another winnable game for them, so I think there's really a possibility for them to genuinely finish top in the Champions League. Yeah. But we will see. And of course, the big game, I'm going to be in the stadium. I'm not looking forward to it. Inter against Arsenal. I'm going to be in the Curva with all my Inter supporting friends. Adam, give me a reason why I should think we can win this.
Because Inter have had a few performances of late where I'd say they've lacked the intensity. They have certainly missed the inputs of Hakan Çalhanoğlu. And yeah, you've got a very wasteful striker in Marcus Thuram that hasn't scored in the league approximately for a month now. His last goal coming in a hat-trick against Torino, specifically a month ago when this podcast actually goes live. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for Arsenal. But yeah, I would anticipate still Inter to have enough strength in their camp anyway to potentially get a result here, Rory. But yeah, it should be an interesting kind of matchup, shall we say, given the kind of form of Arsenal right now.
I think this is more kind of a psychological thing for Arsenal at the minute. Like, if they can go to a stadium like the San Siro and get a win, it would just be a huge, we're on the European big stage. We've done it. Our form away from in Europe hasn't been fantastic anyway, so it would be a big thing for Arteta as well. But fingers crossed, it's just a lovely game of football and everyone has a good time and nobody discovers I'm an Arsenal fan. In the Europa League, we have Galatasaray hosting Tottenham. That'll be a quiet night in, not. And we have Manchester United hosting PAOK. I think that's how you say that.
Yep.
And in the Conference League, who are Chelsea playing this week? Oh, it's one bloke on his own. They're playing Noah. I feel sorry for the lad. Let's see if we can get a result. That is everything with the English teams in Europe this week. I'm not making that mistake again. Adam, take us through to the Premier League action this weekend.
Yes, so we enter game week 11 in the Premier League. So we'll start off on Saturday with the fixtures. So starting off at 3 p.m. UK time, we've got Brentford at home to Bournemouth in the Battle of the Bees. Then followed up by Crystal Palace at home to Fulham, West Ham at home to Everton, and Wolverhampton Wanderers at home to Southampton in a big 6-pointer there. We then move into the 5:30 p.m. kickoff time, and that's Brighton at home to Manchester City, before at 8 p.m. we see Liverpool host Aston Villa. Then we move into Sunday's fixtures. We'll start off at 2 p.m. and Man United host Leicester City. Nottingham Forest are at home to Newcastle United. and Spurs are at home to Ipswich Town before we see the big game here, Rory. 4:30 p.m. kickoff time. Chelsea at home to your beloved Arsenal, and that is your game week 11 before those crazy internationals come into our lives again for the last time in 2024.
Come on, I can't wait. We're all excited, right? International break, international break, international break. It's what we all want. It's what we all want. It's what we're in the game for. The Nations League. I'm hyped. Guys, thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed it. Go over and check our Serie A episode out. It was a great weekend in Serie A. Napoli got battered. And what else happened? Oh, so did Roma. If you're an Everton fan, go and listen to that. Genuinely go and listen to it. If you feel like you're in too good a mood, go and listen to that episode. Adam, anything to say before I send the listener home?
Just to say, we're delighted to hear the news that TikTok have enabled these services of live to ourselves. So we will be going live with some impromptu tuned in activities. So yeah, keep an eye on our social media channels. We'll be sure to let you know what we've got planned going forward. But yeah, DM us some questions, maybe some topics that you'd like us to discuss, and join us there on TikTok.
We'll see you there, guys. Make sure to, if you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button down here. If you're listening on the podcast, go to your podcast app of choice. Give us a subscription, give us a rating, leave a comment. You can find us on Twitter or X at Italian Anglo Pod, and on TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. Go and check the Serie A episode out. We'll see you next time. See you later.
Ciao, ciao.